Welcome back. Reed69 here with another cool video. And today we have a very interesting list. I think it's probably the first of its kind to, hit competitive viability, at least on ladder. Although, given how often S-rank players will, experiment and those who don't necessarily make content, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a similar list. But today we have the Wizard Lizard, Spell Starhorn, the Green Mantra, Gandalf the Green. Any of these names fit, as some of the people on the Discord chat I was talking about wanted to help with. But they all get the point across, and that is that despite playing Mantra for, 3, 4, somewhat months at this point, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that Magmar also had a spell list and could do just about everything that Mantra could do, but arguably better. I don't think the damage ceiling is as high with regards to high rolls, but it more than compensates with regards to controlling board, limiting opponent options, and just sustaining overall. You will out-heal Mantra. You can out-heal even, the likes of Aggro Xerix with a deck like this. And after a lot of testing, I've managed to maintain a pretty good standing with this deck. I think it's holding about a 70, 71, 72% win rate right now in S. I consider that pretty good. And that's even factoring in the early games where I was still learning how to, get the deck to work and what things I should be replacing for in different matchups. And there was, I think, one game I outright threw. But yeah, it's an awesome deck, and I'm going to show it to you in action today. Just a quick run through. And spoiler alerts, just as an FYI before we go any further, disclaimer, certain cards in this deck will be reworked with an upcoming patch. According to my source, this patch will be coming within a week at the time of this video. So if you do not have any of these cards, do not go out of your way to craft them, because you probably will have a dead deck in 5 or 6 days. Okay, so moving on. It's a pretty cool deck, as we can see, and it's also, I think, incidentally, the first deck that at least I've seen on ladder that doesn't run Mecantor. It's too expensive and slows the deck down too much for what it's trying to do. So the win con of this deck, obviously, is centered around Adjudicator, Decimus, and Entropic Gaze, and Tectonic Spikes. Basically, between Flash and Adjudicator for ramp, you can pull out some pretty nutty combos and, just destroy your opponent from 20 plus points of health from an empty board because of your out-of-hand potential. And while I think this is definitely a highlight of this deck and the win con, the major, I think, stronger still is the fact that Adjudicator can also ramp down. Magmar is just absolutely broken removal suite. 4 mana Plasma Storms, 3 mana Homeostatic Rebukes, 2 mana Natural Selections, 2 mana Upper Hand, which, yes, works very well on this deck because your opponent will almost always be at 6 cards. Just phenomenal removal suite in both single and AoE. With the right replaces, you will be able to destroy most board-based decks out there. Kalios is a laughable stomp for this deck. Didn't even have to think hard. Just clicked and removed, and there wasn't really anything the players could do about it. Strategos goes down as long as you're able to get a Plasma Storm and a Rebuke for the Jack's turn. And yeah, just a lot of healing overall. So let's go through a couple choices. So Adjudicator, Decimus, their win cons. Or Adjudicator is Enabler, and Decimus is a win con. But let's go through some of the more questionable spells, I think. So starting it off, we have Dampening Wave. I have this as a 2x, and it's one of the few 2x's in this deck. There's only 3 of them. And the reason why we only run 2 Dampening Waves is because it's a 0-cost spell, and it's really nice sometimes. You can sometimes just throw it out to avoid being milled. But more importantly, too, it synergizes pretty well with Saurian Finality and Vat's Brutality. A lot of times you can punch something for free and not worry about the damage being taken. And it can set up for a really nice natural selection play, especially if there's just a little guy near you. We only have it as a 2-of because I don't find it universally useful, just because a lot of times you'll be turtling, or your opponent will play something backline, and you can't remove it from there, such as, say, a Sworn Avenger versus Stratagas. So that's why we only have 2, because of its limited application. Flash is a 3-of, and it's a combo piece. It enables our Decimus combos. On 8 mana, you can do 18 out of hand without even ramping your tech spikes. Just phenomenal card overall and an enabler. I will say it's a good idea to cycle it in the early game, and you probably shouldn't be holding on to more than 1 at any given time. However, if you do have 2 Decimus in the early game, in the late game, it's definitely worth considering holding on to this. Entropic Gaze, another good card. Not so much a win con as a cycle. So the key point of this deck is you're going to always want to be able to use your Bloodborne spell, and you always want to be cycling and replacing every turn, drawing into removal and win cons or healing. And Entropic Gaze just does that. It cantrips and it does 2 damage. It's a good ping. It evens your matchup against artifacts. It's a good card, and it's worth a 3-of, just because it also doubles as lethal damage later on with Decimus. Invigoration. I'm really excited about including this card. I think it's the first deck that really can use Invigoration as a 3x to its full capacity. Starhorn, Spell Magmar, has always been limited in a sense of its viability because it couldn't cycle through its cards fast enough, largely because its spells were pretty expensive. You've got Plasma Storm at 5, Saurian at 8, Plasma, Earth Sphere are all cost 4, and then everything else is cost 3. So Invigorate, coupled with a lot of your cheaper spells, really helps you have this pool of spells that you can constantly cast every turn, which frees up room for your Bloodborne spell, and also keeps your deck cycling, keeps the pipeline flowing, so to speak. It's very consistent in this deck. It often will help you float. It will often help you float, awkward turns where, let's say, you just play a Rebuke and you have 2 mana left. You can play that and get rewarded for doing that later on because you'll have a 6 or heal 6 or heal 9 for 2, which is phenomenal. I think there's a couple games that I'll be showing today that will demonstrate just the incredible burst potential that this heal has. Natural Selection, I don't think I need to explain this. It's probably the best 2-cost removal in the game. Very hard to play around, even at higher levels of play. No reason you should be running 3x. Vat's Brutality, another excellent card. So notice how we have 17 spells that cost 2 or less in our hand, which means that the cycle ability of this deck, even without Adjudicator, is it's pretty good. I've definitely won my fair share of games without Adjudicator, and Vat's Brutality is one of the reasons why you can do that. It's a great way to set up certain turns. So like, let's say you don't want to Rebuke right away. You can stall by stunning a minion, and then getting everything else the next turn with a Rebuke. So it's very good for setting up, efficient clears in that way. Also, the attack increase is great. It prevents people from wailing on you with Arcalite Regalia for free, and it also really will punish opponents for going face. On top of that, it also helps you clear a good amount of smaller drops, particularly when you're going up against Stratagas or Swarmy lists. And they play those pesky 3 HP minions. Well, now you can clear it, and it's pretty nice. Tech Spikes, again, obvious win con. It's absolutely disgusting with Adjudicator. You hit 2 of these, they cost 2 on 7. Decimus can do 18 damage without even flashing it. Yeah, it's really filthy. On 8, you can do 18 if you hit 2 Tech Spikes. Really nasty stuff, but amazing nonetheless. Upper hand, I think, is a pretty cool inclusion. I know certain aggro Starhorn decks do use it. I've seen a couple top end players use it with a lot of success. But it really shines here because you're almost always going to have your opponent at 5 or 6 cards. And at that point, you can kill just about any mid-range minion pretty easily. Dampening Wave and Upper Hand, you can clear an Iron Cliff if you've had a Brutality down, if you've had enough Brutalities down. Phenomenal card. Earth Sphere. We only have 2 here. The reason why we're only running 2 is I found 3 was a little too clunky, especially since we have Invigorate. Invigorate I almost always will use before Earth Sphere unless I really need the burst heal. But nonetheless, it heals for 8 for 4. If you ramp it out, you can natural select an Earth Sphere on 5, which against aggro is like absolutely backbreaking. It's hilarious. Anyway, moving on. Rebuke, also another amazing card. Just absolutely dismisses aggro boards. It makes it really hard for your opponent to really punish you, because if they, go in, cash in, and go face one turn, you can mop up what's ever left and then heal back up, and they won't know what hit them. Yeah, so it's an amazing board. It's an amazing turn. I would hesitate on using it against, say, the likes of Swarm, Brome, just because a lot of their minions have higher health versus Lionar. Save for the late game because it will deal with Jax and Elix in particular very well. It also is really nice if you suspect your opponent is running EMP. It's a very clean answer to that threat. Plasma Storm. Another one of your techs. I run it almost exclusively to deal with Obelisk Vet and Strategos Brome. It'll clean up just about anything that they put down, and then you can usually follow up with either a natural selection or a homeostatic rebuke to deal with Aurora. Yeah, not much else to say. It can definitely feel dead at times, but it's necessary to win certain matchups. When it's hit with Adjudicator, it's absolutely disgusting. You just delete their entire first 2 turns of play with a single card. I mean, there's a reason why 4 Mana Plasma was broken, and it's no different now. So yeah, in that respect, phenomenal card. Finally, Saurian Finality. I used to have this at 3 because I thought the heals were great, but seeing how well this deck cycles, I cut it down to 2. I almost always can draw it when I need it, just because the deck moves to itself so quickly. It's just way more consistent. So I didn't really feel the need for, I didn't really feel the need for 2. Or, more than 2. So, yeah, it's there. It works pretty well. It's an alt win con. A lot of times, if your opponent is being pesky and trying to stay healthy, you can slam this on 8, knock them back to the Stone Age, punch them a couple times, and then finish them out with a Decimus. It's also a great way to stay healthy versus aggro, because sometimes you just can't drag the game out long enough to combo off of the Decimus, so you buy yourself a couple extra turns with this amazing card. And at that point, too, your general's huge as fuck, so no one wants to get close. All right, let's hop into a couple games and see what it looks like. Yeah, so pretty decent win rate. I think it held around like 70%. 70%, maybe 71, 72% win rate overall. Pretty good. So let's go through a couple fun ones that I think really showcase this deck's power. Let's try this one. It's against Frostweaver. He's a mod on Reddit. It's pretty good too. Played very well in that game. So right off the bat, I'm looking at this hand. I'm probably going to replace Draining Wave and maybe even upper hand in favor of more efficient. So because we know he's running Swarm, we want to prioritize AoE. So we get our Plasma, we get our Rebuke. This is fantastic for us. Oh, an Adjudicator. This is great. Skip turn 2. Don't even care. Don't even care. We have Decimus. We have this. We're going to ramp. This is great. So he's got to lean on forward. He's going to lead with some Golan shenanigans, if I remember correctly. Okay. So here's an interesting point. You're going to see I'm going to replace a natural selection before I Adjudicator. And there's an interesting reason for this. As I said before, we're going up against Swarm, so natural selection probably won't do a whole lot versus them, because they've got a lot of one-attack minions to begin with. So we want to prioritize AoE. Also, if you're looking here, you notice that he's going on 4. If I let him take these tiles, he could ramp right into Jax. This is why we're going to play Adjudicator on the tile, and we're going to stun the Warblade. This way, he can't ramp with a minion. He has to move up, and in doing so, he's positioning very awkwardly for a Bloodborne turn. So he won't be able to play a Crestpollen to be able to lock me down. This is great for us. So, all right, he plays Aurora. He clears that. That's fine with us. We're at 3 HP. We can clear it. Excuse me, 3 attack. He's going to play Jaxi. Yeah, so we don't need Entropic right now. Our Bloodborne spell is up. I'm prioritizing removal at this point, and then worry about combos later. That was a mistake. I'm just going to pause it here. That was a mistake, just so you guys know. The idea here was that I already have Rebuke in hand, so if I wanted to Plasma, I could have just Plasma'd right now, and then I wouldn't have had to worry about the mini Jax. But as it stands, it looks like I'm going to have to Rebuke this turn. In the end, it turns out that this works out for me because I ended up holding this Plasma Storm. But just as an FYI, since my original play was to go with Plasma, it was a mistake to punch the Jaxi since I could already mop it up the next turn with Homeostatic Rebuke. Just something to consider. Goodness, a second Decimus. Oh my goodness, second Flash. So at this point I'm thinking I can probably kill him early, and that's for the better. I can definitely drag games out against even a fully Mithroned Rome, but that's definitely not a matchup I want to test. I know I can win with my combos, and if I can get a chance to do it early and not have to worry about his late game, I'll definitely take it. Especially once he reveals Ash Nephite, which means that that'll be very problematic if you can get one off in the later game. So here's a very pivotal turn here, and I think it's one of the few times that I would say it's okay to skip a turn. I'm not going to Plasma here, and the reason is because he's at 5. What comes out on 6? If you're guessing Jax, you're probably right. I'm not replacing either because I have 18 points of damage in hand and a 3 attack general. At this point, I'm thinking he doesn't really know what I'm running. I'm going to take a risk and start punching him. I don't really care about milling a card at this point because nothing that he plays in this coming turn, bar maybe Aurora, will be something I have to worry about, and that I already have Plasma Storm. So I mill a Vaat's Brutality. That's not terribly important. I think if he punishes with an Aurora play, I definitely would have seen that as a misplay, but I was rewarded for it. And especially with these combo decks, I think you really have to, strut the line between fishing for combos and controlling board. Because, yeah, you can control the board for turn upon turn upon turn, but eventually there comes a point where you have to try to start winning. And sometimes it comes earlier than others. And this is definitely one of those times. So exactly, right? See, he jaxes. I have Plasma for it now. This game is pretty much... I don't want to say it's over, but he's going to have to be paranoid and really expect the heals to do it. And I'm not sure if he has double Shroud to deal with 2 Decimi anyway. So I'm sticking with this line of play, and I think it's going to work fine. Boom, boom, boom. Mopped up. And you're just going to move state level with him and punch him another time. Oh, not even punished, too. You get upper hand in case he tries to Aurora. Which between BBS and, tech spikes, we should definitely be able to deal with an Aurora if it does indeed come out. Also, if he were to play, an Aurora, that chances are that means he probably wouldn't heal. So there's a good chance we just kill him either way. Titan. Ooh, that's interesting. That's really spicy. He's still running the trial too, right? Yeah, oh yeah, he ran the trial. Very interesting. But, as you can see, that's unfortunately GG. Well played, Frostweaver. But, yeah. We have 20 points of damage in our hand. Well played, good sir. Oh, excuse me. I misspoke earlier. I said Decimus, two flash Decimi plus tech spikes is 18. That was a mistake. It's actually 15. So the cards themselves do 12 apiece. The cards themselves do 12 because Decimus usually will do 6 with 3 drawn cards and then 3 for Decimus for the tech spikes effect. So 12 plus 3 is 15. But lucky for us, we still have lethal. We had our BBS, that's 4, so that's 19 points of damage. 20 points of damage, like exactly I said, from the punch. I misspoke, though. Sorry. A lot of people forget about that. All right, so let's try another one. We got time. I'm not driving. Oops. Not this guy. So I showed you Brome. I think I'll show you a Wandered matchup now, just because that's likely what you guys are seeing on ladder. And I'll show you just that this deck stands a fighting chance. As I said before, I haven't lost to a Wanderer with this deck. Whether it's because of a good matchup or because I've just been really lucky, I don't know at this point, but I can't complain. Where is it? Yeah. All right. So this is a pretty cool one. We go up against Flash Wanderer and win. And I think you'll enjoy it. I'm going to try and put it at 1.5 because I think things are moving a little too slowly for my liking. All right, so right off the bat, we're getting rid of Entropic Gaze and Heal. Ragnoa is a slightly weaker matchup for us just because we lack pings that a lot of other factions have, and we have to rely on more heavy-handed removal to deal with their threats. But lucky for us, we pull out in the end. I replaced the heal and the Entropic earlier just because Wanderer's a mid-range list. It wins on value, not so much on bursty combos. So we can be a little more liberal with our health. He drops a Celebrant. I natural select it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want him to ramp into a 5. I like him keeping his things small because makes me think less. I can just AoE and kill everything. Plays the Aether Master, which is an interesting inclusion. I played a Wanderer Ragnar myself. I don't include it, but I can definitely see how that would improve consistency. Oh, fantastic. So again, he's going to try and ramp into 6. So we draw our Vat's Vitality. We stun him. See? And this is another example of why Vat's Vitality is so great in this deck. It helps us cycle through our cards, so I can use my BBS the next turn. And it makes for much cleaner AoEs. You'll notice that this is an earlier game where I'm holding my Saurian. You shouldn't do that. I found that it's much better to cycle heals earlier on, so if you do end up playing this deck, do cycle Saurians earlier. There's just enough cycle in this deck that you're not going to be punished for cycling it. It'll come back to you pretty easily. So our stopping is all in vain because he does ramp out the Wanderer. But lucky for us, we have our answer in Rebuke. So see here, now I do replace it. And I get a much more flexible choice here. I get Earth Sphere, which is nice. It's much more flexible. It'll work way better with my curve. But now we have to Rebuke. If you're playing against Wanderer, always make sure you're holding on to Rebuke and hard replace for it. Because that's the only card in this deck that will cleanly deal with the Wanderer board. Good news, though, is if you do get it, you pretty much, you don't win, but your odds of winning are drastically improved. Simply because it's such a huge tempo loss for them. So he plays Bone Reaper. I really wish I had Plasma Storm right now. Hopefully I get it. I don't. Okay. But, again, he's at 6 cards in hand. I have 2 upper hands. No problem. No problem. 12 points of damage. Casually killing a 6-drop. So that's a 2-for-1, but mana cost, it balances out. I'm Starhorn. I don't have to worry about card advantage that much, so I think this was fair. That's probably the only fatty. So now we start seeing our combo pieces. So this is good. I think we're in a good position. Let's see what he does. Okay, so he's playing smart by going in with some heals. Then he will propagate Rage. Okay. Another important point, too, is that Propagate Rage is weaker with Vat's Brutality simply because you stop them from being able to do their Ripper combos. Unfortunately, versus Ragnar, you need 2 to stop the Greater Fortitude combo. So I'm getting out of here. I'm looking for my AoE, and I'm very lucky that I top-decked that Adjudicator and the Tech Spikes. Again, another reason why Adjudicator is broken with Magmar spells. 3 mana Earth Sphere, playing an Adjudicator while advancing my combos. Yeah, I have 18 points of damage next turn with Flash Decimus. 21 points of damage if you count, 20 points of damage if you count the Bloodborne spell. I'm in a good spot, and I'm also at full health. So he goes with Crater. I don't think he's doing anything wrong either. This guy's playing very well. He's healing up. He knows I'm a combo deck. He's pushing face damage, but he's also preserving board. And he's also making things really awkward. And he doesn't punch here, which is smart. Because if he punched, it would have been easy. But unfortunately for him, we replaced into an Entropic Gaze. Boom, boom, boom. He's done. I also think it's worth noting here that we weren't as lucky as some people might think. Tech Spikes drew us 6 cards, so the odds of us drawing into an Entropic Gaze as well was also pretty high. So just something to consider. We had a lot of damage outs here that weren't necessarily limited to Decimus or Entropic Gaze. Um, so yeah, that's another pretty funny example of the deck. How much damage did I do back there? I did 9 with the first Decimus and then 15 with the next. Yeah, so casual 24 damage lethal right there. NBD. I think I still would have won with the just the 2 gazes, but still feels good. Okay, so we've seen Strategos, we've seen Wanderer. Let's do one more for fun. One more for fun. This one's a little longer game, but it's and I probably won't commentate on it as much, just because it's a matchup you're unlikely to face. But we were very lucky to come across a control versus control matchup, and we faced a Variax Cass with Creep, and it was a pretty epic fight. So I do think I misplay here a little more than I would like, but things work out in the end, and I hope you enjoy it. As always, it's been fun talking with these videos, and I hope you enjoy this last one. Just going to step in real briefly here. Given that I was Earth-Sphearing on that turn, there was no reason for me not to come up here and punch. He's revealed Desolator, which means that even with my combos, he's going to be able to stay pretty high if I don't punch his face. So I should have punched there. That was a mistake, just as an FYI. All right, I'll leave you to it. Yeah, I said I wouldn't commentate that much on this video because it's a long one. So yeah, back to the video. And that's that. So, hope you guys enjoyed these couple replays. Feel free to add me in game or on DO if you want to see more. It's a fun deck. As I said before, there's going to be a patch coming within the week, according to some of my inside sources. So if you haven't crafted this deck yet and you don't have the cards, I wouldn't recommend crafting it just because it's probably going to be reworked into obscurity. But otherwise, if you guys have a deck, have the cards necessary to build this deck, by all means play it. Also, Alphacentury, I think the Grandmaster, is also going to be making a video on this. So once he has a video, I'm going to post a link in the description. All right, stay frosty till next time, guys. Bye.